Tyler Shough proved in Sunday's win that he can be the future for the New Orleans Saints at quarterback. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we'll take a look at what New Orleans needs to do from here at the bye week through the rest of the season in order to keep hopes high here in the Big Easy. We'll also take a look at how the draft is impacted by the Saints' most recent win and their clear goal in continuing to win games throughout the rest of the season. But we're going to kick everything off here with what matters most, and that is the quarterback position. New Orleans Saints quarterback Tyler Shough proving he can be and has what it takes to be the future in New Orleans. We'll discuss why and what could get in his way, because unfortunately, we know not all roads are easy. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much. As always, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network, as we are your team every day. New Orleans Saints rookie quarterback Tyler Shough proved that he has what it takes to be the future at quarterback for this team. That doesn't mean that it's going to be a guaranteed thing. It doesn't mean that he is absolutely the franchise quarterback. But as I went through and rewatched and studied each and every one of his snaps against Carolina and went back and rewatched and studied all of his snaps up against the Los Angeles Rams, I will tell you that there's not a lot that I see that raises a bunch of red flags when it comes to Tyler Shough. He's got NFL size. He's got an NFL arm. In fact, the arm is almost confusing at times. Both of the passes to Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson that were deep downfield looked like passes that weren't going to make it when he threw it, because he doesn't have to go all out to push the ball down the field, but yet the football makes it exactly where it needs to be, gets out in front of the receiver, allows the receiver to run and get under the ball, all those other pieces. There were a lot of times where I saw the throws go off of Tyler Shough's hands and I went, oh man, that does not have what it needs to get there. And then the ball absolutely gets there. So his NFL arm talent is undeniable from an arm strength perspective. And I would say from a downfield accuracy perspective as well. Does a very good job of locating those passes, even though one-handed twirling catch for Chris Olave was high and outside, giving Chris Olave the only opportunity to get to the ball, avoiding the receiver or avoiding the defender. There was another pass to Devon Vele down the right sideline that did the same thing, back shoulder. Unfortunately, Vele came up with a college catch, only 1 foot in bounds, not 2 feet in bounds, but we saw the big role for Vele that we expected, more than 50 snaps, more than 80% of snaps in that game. Didn't see a ton of the targets head his way, but a great catch on a third and long situation that the Saints probably should have went for it on 4th and 2 or whatever it was after that. But all that aside, the arm strength is there, the arm talent is there, there's no doubt. And one of the other things that stood out to me, particularly in the game up against the Carolina Panthers, is the way that Tyler Shough has more than one throw or more than a couple of types of throws in his arsenal. What do I mean by that? The downfield throw was one. The bullet to Devon Vele on 3rd and long that split 2 defenders, that's another type of throw, right? It's not the downfield arm strength, but it's the arm strength that gets that ball there in a hurry, the heaters that he can throw. But then he also showed some touch. He had a really, really nice throw to Chris Olave for 18 yards. He stepped up in the pocket and then lofted one over a defender to him, had sort of a 3-level concept over on that left side of the field, got the ball over the defender that was covering the down low defender, the short defender, and then got the ball into the intermediate area for Chris Olave to simply run under and then go and make the catch. Now, Chris Olave came up with a hurt ankle after that, but had nothing to do with the location of the pass or anything. It was just part of the hit, and then was able to return to the game after that, as we saw the fantastic one-handed twirling catch later. And so you see the different, his ability to be able to throttle his arm when necessary, to to be able to put the foot on the gas when necessary with his arm. I think that that's something that's worth highlighting as well. And again, I'll go back to and continue to go back to, because we harp so much on this through the pre-draft process, that I need to give him credit, Tyler Shough, for showing the advancement in this conversation. His ability under pressure. He was outstanding under pressure throughout this game. And I thought operated pretty well on the move throughout this game as well. A lot of his passes went out to the perimeter. A lot of that had to do with the fact that he was moving around in the pocket and then moving to one side or the other. Receivers are working with him. All of a sudden, the scramble drill is working a lot better than it was working earlier on in the season. So something about the way that he's orchestrating that is working well for New Orleans. And look, when I make these comments about early season, late season, it's going to sound like, oh, Spencer Rattler this, Tyler Shough that. I'm not comparing the two quarterbacks, if I'm being completely honest. Right now, everything about Tyler Shough is how does he look compared to himself game after game after game. I'm not gonna, belittle another quarterback in talking about this one. The bottom line is that Tyler Shough performed well, and that Tyler Shough didn't show red flags. Tyler Shough didn't show a lot of things that might be concerning. And so if he's able to play that level consistently, it doesn't have to be every game. No quarterback plays that well every single game. But if he continues to play consistently, like he played up against Carolina, I think that's more than enough for you to at least feel comfortable going into 2026 with him as your passer, which then opens up a lot of the opportunities for you in terms of how you're using premium draft capital, so on and so forth. So New Orleans could be in a really good situation here, but the really good situation only happens if Tyler Shough looks good. And so far, going back and rewatching him, he absolutely looks good. It feels like the offense responds to him. It feels like he's got a good connection with the receivers and the pass catchers. Helped Juwan Johnson become only the fourth tight end in New Orleans Saints history to have over 2,000 receiving yards. And that was all accumulated. That was the 2,000 yards accumulated after he transitioned to tight end. Remember, he started off as a wide receiver. Chris Olave gets his first 100-yard game. Of course, want to continue to see these outstanding performances from him. How about him coming in and having a performance like that in Bank of America Stadium, where his career almost felt like it came to an end last year with that dreadful concussion and hit that he took? And then to show up a year later, almost exactly a year later, and then put up a game like he did, you do that and your quarterback helps you get there. Like, that's awesome. And then the rest of the offense just kind of opened up. Even the screen game got to working. Alvin Kamara with a big screen catch and run like we feel like we haven't seen in New Orleans in quite some time. It really felt like everything from an anticipation conversation, delivery, accuracy, which I think is probably the ball placement you just want to see continue to be consistent, maybe a little bit more consistent there. But as you continue to bring in these guys that have these large catch radiuses and that can help out a quarterback and give you these potential situations where you just put the ball near them and then go up there and make a play like a Chris Olave, like a Devon Vele, like a Juwan Johnson was on Sunday, that helps with all those things. But obviously there are, steps to take, and no one should be, raising the banner for the new franchise quarterback in New Orleans after just one game. That's a lot of pressure to put, or after just 2 games, that's a lot of pressure to put on the young man. But we wanted to see the maturity, we wanted to see the ability to manage pressure, and we wanted to see the positive signs. And all of those were absolutely evident after a game up against Carolina. Now, competition is always going to be a question, but don't forget that is a Carolina Panthers team that had a winning record in this matchup and that just went to Lambeau Field and knocked off the Green Bay Packers. That was a good football team that the Saints beat, and that was a good football team that Tyler Shough showed up and showed out against. Coming up next, how this win impacts a New Orleans Saints draft could actually be for their benefit. Let's break that down as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Rippling. If you are a business owner, you've heard all the stories about how different things are supposed to make work easier for you. But now the average company is buried by a bunch of apps, hundreds of apps that slow you down, slow down your teams, and don't even communicate or work together. That's not what you were promised, right? You want to see software as a service, not software as a disservice. And that is where Rippling comes in. Everything from global HR to payroll to IT to finance, all in one place, helping millions of businesses replace the mess of all of these disconnected tools with one simplified system and design that's designed specifically to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. So you can get all of it right now and 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/lockedonnfl. That's rippling.com/lockedonnfl, rippling.com/lockedonnfl for 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints won a football game, but for some people that might feel like, oh no, the New Orleans Saints won a football game because you're worried about draft tracking and the Saints draft position. Well, there's some good news for you in terms of how this weekend worked out. The Saints still hold the number 2 overall pick after winning their game. Let's discuss how that happened and what it means for the Saints moving forward, and how this win and the potential wins on the way will impact the Saints draft strategy. So for right now, the Saints were sitting going into this game up against Carolina with the number 1 overall selection. They won their game, improving from 1-8 to 2-8. The thing is, the New York Giants also won, the New York Jets also won. And of course, the Miami Dolphins got a big time upset win against Buffalo as well. The AFC East always does some weird stuff like that. And so because of that, the Saints had 2 other teams that they were most kind of connected to when it came to the number 1 overall pick or these early draft orders. But because they also won, the Saints barely moved. The Tennessee Titans moved into the number 1 overall selection because they were on a bye week at 1-8, and they had a better strength of schedule than the Saints had. So the Saints were holding the number 1 overall selection, though tied with the Tennessee Titans because of strength of schedule. Now the Saints win and the Titans didn't play. The Titans take the number 1 overall selection, and the Saints sit there with the number 2 overall pick. So for New Orleans, that's not necessarily bad news. The Saints don't need to hold on to the number 1 overall selection if the quarterback is playing well. And as we just highlighted, there are a lot of things that Tyler Shough is doing well right now that would, if he maintains that, will mean playing yourself outside of draft position, but not necessarily needing the draft position either to be a number 1 overall selection or a number 2 overall selection. If you get within the top 5 or stay within the top 5, then it gives you an opportunity to build the team around the young quarterback that's showing some promise. This won't be the last game that the Saints win. In fact, I think they actually have a chance at home up against the Atlanta Falcons, where in the Caesar Superdome, where no rookie quarterback has ever won a game, because Caesar Superdome, you get it. But for New Orleans, this is a major opportunity for them to endear their fan base a little bit, and for Tyler Shough to become a little bit of a hometown hero in beating the Atlanta Falcons to get his 2nd win of his career and the 3rd win of the Saints season. So there will be more wins on the way. But the good news is that as long as those wins are happening because the quarterback is playing well, the need for the number 1 overall selection diminishes. And this is what we talked about when Tyler Shough was appointed as the starting quarterback for New Orleans up ahead of that Los Angeles Rams game, was that Tyler Shough had the ability to play the Saints out of drafting competition for his position for 2026. And so far, he is showing a propensity, or a capacity rather, to be able to do exactly that. If the Saints get their win up against Atlanta next week, they advance to 3-8, and then they're probably out of conversation for the number 1 or number 2 overall selection for a little bit of time. Now they could lose some more games. Tennessee, the New York Jets, as well as the Tennessee, I already said the Tennessee Titans, sorry, the Miami Dolphins could potentially win or lose some games down the stretch. The New York Giants are trying to join the conversation as well. They lost their game on Sunday, but the Saints still hold the number 2 overall selection despite that. Even though the Saints beat the Giants, the tiebreakers are really all about strength of schedule, and the Saints have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. And so because of that, they're likely to end up at the top portion of any tiebreaker scenario when it comes to when it comes to draft position because of how easy their schedule was. And so New Orleans could be in a situation where it ends up with the number 3, number 4, number 5 overall selection. And if that happens, they don't have to rush for a quarterback. They can draft players that will have a major impact around this team. So think about it. What would you add to this team right now to make this team better based on the performance that you saw up against Carolina? Obviously, health was a big factor, right? The Saints were down 3 offensive linemen, but I don't think you need to go running to the first round of the NFL draft in a top 5 selection and spending on an offensive lineman. You could do that in the second round. You could do that later on in the draft if you want to, or you could try to handle that through free agency. Always a little bit challenging, but something you can do for New Orleans. Now, if you think about it and you go, okay, well, the one thing that the Saints haven't done so far this year is, even though they're getting sacks, they're not generating consistent pressure. So if you can walk away with a Ruben Bain at pick number 3 overall, or you look at another player that could potentially contribute on the defensive side, and Arvell Reese, the versatile hybrid, probably best player in this draft linebacker out of Ohio State, both of those players give you a big time boost to your defense. The defense starts to fit a little bit more of what Staley's scheme is asking of them. And we saw in Sunday's game up against Carolina that when the execution of the scheme is there, the scheme works. And so finding players that fit that early in the draft makes a ton of sense. And so if you can draft a player like that, or even, heck, if the Saints really want to go for it, go and grab a Caleb Downs that ends up being the Derwin James of Brandon Staley's defense. Also not a bad situation if you're in that top 4, top 5, but not within the top 3 type of situation. The other idea here is continue to add weapons on the offensive side. Now, you could do that in the second round if you're drafting early enough, because it kind of gives you that 2 first-round pick feel there because of how early the second-round pick would be. But also within the top 5, if Downs and Reese and some of these other guys are off the board, a Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State makes a ton of sense to add to Chris Olave, to add to Juwan Johnson, to add to these other pass catchers, Devon Vele as well. They can go out there and contribute for you on a week-to-week basis. And so for the Saints, as their offense and as their quarterback performs, it makes and opens up the options for what you can do with the draft pick, regardless of where you're drafting. As long as you're kind of in that top range of premier draft position, it gives you a good opportunity. And then if you perform better to the points where you're outside of that, but you still have a top 10 selection, you're still in a good place to add weaponry around your situation, add weaponry around your quarterback, continue to bolster the defense, all those other pieces. And so New Orleans could go to the defensive side and boost their front in the top 5. They could go to the weapons and add a big time wide receiver and threat in the top 5. In the top 10, they could add to their secondary if they wanted to. Caleb Downs could be a top 5 guy as well. But there are a lot of paths for this New Orleans Saints team, even if they're not holding the number 1 overall selection. It'd be great for New Orleans to get solid play from its quarterback, but yet somehow still hold on to the number 1 overall selection and then be able to trade back. That's the pie in the sky scenario for New Orleans. But as of right now, as long as Tyler Shough is performing well and the Saints are maintaining some key draft position, you could have your cake and eat it too. If you're in New Orleans, get the quarterback now that you feel comfortable, at least for 2026, going in with, and then add and build around. And then if you want to take a flyer on a 3rd round quarterback or something like that, you can, or figure out what you need to do in 2027 if you need to. But if you feel really good about where Tyler Shough is, and so far he's showing promise, again, we have to see it consistently over multiple games. We can't, crown anybody off of a performance or 2 performances, but he's showing a lot of promise. And so that could mean that he helps to play the New Orleans Saints out of position to draft a quarterback, and instead drafting players that will help him in his future as the Saints passer, at least for 2026. All right, coming up next, the New Orleans Saints need to continue to show consistency throughout the rest of the season and still have some improvements to make. Let's break down what we want to see from the team moving forward as we wrap up with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sports betting partners of the NBA. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than over with FanDuel. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, live betting is one of my favorite features over at FanDuel. You can bet on everything from who scores next to a fourth quarter comeback. You can even put different live bets together on a same game parlay for a chance at an even bigger payout. It keeps the game even more exciting, especially when it's your favorite team that's making the late push. I like taking the over on anything having to do with Derek Queen right now because he is absolutely balling out here in New Orleans. It has been a ton of fun to watch. If you haven't watched Derek Queen, absolutely worth your time. Now, right now over at FanDuel, also worth your time. New customers can get $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Thank you again so much for your continued support of this show and your continued support of Locked On Podcast Network, which just became the #1 sports podcasting network. Cannot thank you enough for all of your love and support here on the show and across the network. Even our crossover Thursdays where Julian Council showed up here talking some mad trash. I can't wait to do our next crossover. I just sat there. I was just nice. We'll see. For sure. And everything. And even though I, like many people, thought the Saints were going to go to Carolina and lose that game, I didn't feel like it was time for me to clap back, but I cannot wait for our next crossover. So things like that have been a big part. Your support of things like that have been a big part of what has helped us as a network get here. So thank you for all your support there. And don't forget, you can also catch us over in the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every single Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. We also run again at 5 p.m. most days too, right ahead of some Pelicans games. Make sure you come through for all of that. All right, so the Saints are in an interesting situation now, right? Like, what do we want to see from the Saints moving forward throughout the rest of these games? They have their bye week, but then still 7 games remaining on the back end. A lot of those divisional games still. They've got 2 games with the Falcons, a game left up against the Carolina Panthers, and a game left up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But then they also play some of the teams that they're going to be racing against for the first overall selection or draft positioning, the Tennessee Titans, the New York Giants, as well as the Miami Dolphins. And so for New Orleans, there's kind of a division, I think, that's going to begin to pop up about how people believe the Saints should proceed with their season. Some fans are going to be very excited to be able to watch them win some football games if they manage to win some football games. And look, they have some pretty dreadful opponents on the way, so they should win some games throughout the rest of the season. Everyone wants to see them beat Atlanta. There's no doubt about that. You beat Atlanta at home, then you get them on the road in Atlanta to close out the season. You want to win those games. You got to win those games regardless of your draft value. But beyond that, it's going to be very interesting to see. Do people want the Saints to lose to maintain primary, really good draft positioning? Or do they want to see the Saints go out there and win some football games? Like, what if the Saints end up with 5 wins by the end of the season? That might push them out of the top 5, depending on how things go. Like, the division between the NFL now and like the bottom of the NFL and the top of the NFL is pretty stark, right? Like, for a little while, there was only one 4-win team, and then the gap was between like 5 and 6 win teams and 2 and 3 win teams. Like, there was a major gap there. But do you care about that? You know, if you're the New Orleans Saints, I don't think you can. I think you do have to go out there and try to win football games. And if you don't win them, then great. Your draft value, your draft position improves and everything like that. But the biggest thing for me is show promise. Show promise. What I've loved about what the Saints have done, and I've been critical about this when it comes to Kellen Moore not being aggressive enough, is that there is a level of aggression. I think that sometimes the play calls themselves can be a little conservative. Oh, it's 4th and 2, run it up the middle. You know what I mean? Like, those types of things are conservative. And thankfully, you know, Alvin Kamara can bounce off contact and go and pick up some extra yards, because otherwise the Saints would have ended up with a turnover on downs and a play call just like that. But I think that there's a nature to some of the play calls that aren't great for the situation because of their conservative nature. But I do enjoy the aggression that the Saints pursue when it comes to 3rd and 4th downs. I love that they went for it on 4th down 3 times and converted twice. I love that when it came to converting 3rd downs, they either played for a 4th down or attacked beyond the sticks. I love that Tyler Shough is aggressive in going out there and attacking downfield. He was excellent on 10-plus yard passes on Sunday up against Carolina. I have my notes here that has a stat about that. He was 6 of 10 for 191 yards and 2 touchdowns on passes 10 or more yards downfield. I love the aggression there. I think continuing to show that, and honestly, not to make it sound super rudimentary or anything, but just being fun for a change, I think that is what the New Orleans Saints, if they're doing that throughout the rest of the season, they're going to be enjoyable to watch. They're going to be enjoyable to experience. And the Tyler Shough start is a good one because it's not like the opponents get dramatically tougher throughout the rest of the season. I thought that he handled himself well in the second half up against the Bucs. I thought that he handled himself as well as he could in the situation that he was in against the Rams. And I thought that he was excellent against Carolina. And so he'll see the Bucs again, but that's it. Like, there's not really a fantastic defense that he's going to go up against. Now, Atlanta's going to be interesting because of their pass rushers and because of the Saints' offensive line issues. And so, particularly when it comes to protection. Now, I thought they did a good job in front of him for Sunday, but I also thought that a lot of the reason why that all worked is because Tyler Shough trusts that offensive line. He knows 3 of those guys that are even though they're backups, they're guys that he worked with on the scout team. And so I thought that connection and chemistry really worked. And eventually Taliesin Fuanga will return to the lineup, and I think that will help as well. Kelvin Banks Jr. is awesome. I need to just do an episode talking all about Kelvin Banks Jr. I might do that as like a bonus episode this week. Well, we do have the bye week this week, so maybe that'll work. But I need to just go through and just really give Kelvin Banks Jr. his flowers because he has been excellent. And so I think that it's those things, right? It's those building blocks. You want to see the building blocks for the Saints continue to impress throughout the rest of the season. You want to see Kelvin Banks Jr. continue to be really good. You want to see Tyler Shough continue to be consistent and help you win football games. You want to see Chris Olave finish out the season strong, right? He's got 4 touchdowns. His career high is 5 in a season. He's already almost there. Juwan Johnson is already almost past his career high in receiving yards. And I think he's got 3 receiving touchdowns. His high was 7. So I don't know if he'll meet that, but still looking good there. You want to see how much Devon Vele gets lumped into the offense and how he gets settled in. How much more do we get to see of Danny Stutsman before the season wraps up? And how much more can Isaiah Stallbird continue to have an impact? Isaiah Stallbird isn't going to be someone that's going to get a lot of shine, but there was a big time point in the game where the Saints needed a pressure. And who was the pressure right up the middle? It's Isaiah Stallbird. Continuing to find your future in the secondary. Jonas Sanker continues to impress. Quincy Riley continues to impress. Can he attack the football a little bit more? Can he get back to that ball hawking mentality that he had, during his collegiate days? Does Kool-Aid McKinstry continue to get more and more confident? And as he continues to get more and more confident, does he continue to perform better and better and better? I think all of those pieces are what you're really going to be watching throughout. Oh, does Chase Young continue his tear as well? First, he didn't get a sack up against Carolina. He got there just a little bit later than Nathan Shepard on the sack on Bryce Young there. But I mean, before that, 3 games, 3 sacks over the course of those 3 games. That was the first time in his career he'd ever done that. And so if he continues to prove that he can be a building block that you can build around on defense, if Quincy Riley and Kool-Aid McKinstry show that they can hold down the outside, if Alontae Taylor continues to be a beast on the inside and decides to return here to New Orleans, if Demario Davis continues to play the way that he is playing at this point in his career, those are the things that you should be watching. And then if the team wins, the team wins. If the team loses, the team loses. But watch the building blocks for the rest of the season and see if they provide you the excitement. See if they provide you the promise that you're looking for. And to be honest, the promise that you have been promised as well. Can the Saints cash in on that? Oh, and of course, speaking of young building blocks, how does Kellen Moore continue to progress? Got to get better with game management. Got to get better with some of the conservatism. Got to get better in certain situations, red zone, all that kind of stuff. But does he show that progress with his quarterback, Tyler Shough, at the helm? Those are all going to be things that we're going to be watching. And that's all the Saints got to do. Just continue to prove with their building blocks and provide promise and provide excitement for the fan base. All right, coming up in tomorrow's episode, we'll dive in a little bit more on, a little bit less on Tyler Shough, a little bit more on the defense and how the defense stood out, what worked, what didn't work, and why that Brandon Staley system works when the execution's there. We'll break all that down in tomorrow's episode. if not more. We got all that coming up for you. Thank you so much, as always, making us a party day part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA, N-O-L-A. Hit me up. Let me know the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.